The Buzz with Jess Lujan.
My studio guest, Doc Ron McNitch. 2016 elections, boy, that was funny, as an unskilled worker. So a new definition to that. We don't have to bring any more H2 workers out here. We have, well, no, but they're skilled workers. Yeah.
Yes,
anyway, Doc, national elections.
Sure.
How would, a couple weeks ago, the governor endorsed Senator Ted Cruz to be the nominee. He said he's going to work hard to try to get all nine Republican conventional votes to sway over to Senator Cruz's camp for nomination to that. Now, but when I'm looking at this, okay, and I'm kind of critical of this. I myself personally, I'm a Marco Rubio guy, okay. Now, when I'm looking at this, when I hear Ted Cruz and his representative was here in Guam, sat on my show. We talked to him, and he told us. I mean, there's not going to be one representative who's not going to tell us everything we want to hear. During election time, he told us everything. I mean, shoot, I asked for a sticker right then and there because he told me everything I wanted to hear. But reality sets in, and we said, we've heard this before. We're talking about a strict constitutionalist, right? I'm going, man, they always mess us up because, again, they said, well, the Constitution really wasn't crafted for you guys. There was an amendment to the Constitution to make you constitutional. I mean, you're not constitutional citizens. So I'm saying a strict constitutionalist may not be as good, and has been proven hasn't been as good for Guam as we thought. Although we have maybe the same ideals, those are the ideals nationally doesn't necessarily apply to the territories. Your thoughts?
Sure. Well, first, I think that the governor made the Washington Post by endorsing Ted Cruz.
Mm-hmm.
Great move for Guam. Shows that we matter.
Mm-hmm.
It got us in the national media.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important that we endorse national candidates and participate in national politics. And there's a point, though, that I always remind everyone about how the federal government treats Guam or how the federal government treats territories. If you go back and study the history of of all 37 U.S. territories that later became states, and we have some that didn't become states. For example, the Philippines was a commonwealth and it became an independent country. You study all of those jurisdictions and how the federal government treated them or acted towards them. They were all a bunch of hicks and hillbillies and really given the Puzzle Palace voodoo treatment by Washington, D.C. There's nothing about that that's ever changed. People who live in territories are always viewed as being backward or behind the times or not worthy of statehood, or every single territory is treated like that. Our goal as citizens of a U.S. territory is to change that view and to show that this, is not we're not backward. We are not unsophisticated. We understand the language of governance. We understand the process. And I got to say, I don't think, at least in the current context, I don't think that a person who's born on Guam is any different than any other U.S. citizen constitutionally. I know people will try to cite the insular cases, or they'll try to cite other examples to show why we're different. I just simply don't agree with it in the current context. The same U.S. Supreme Court justices that wrote the insular cases wrote Plessy versus Ferguson, which said you can separate the races and separate but equal. Same group of guys who did Plessy versus Ferguson addressed the insular cases. And so my point is, maybe times have changed, but the courts haven't changed their opinions on these things.
Now, let me ask you this, because Trump was making a big thing out of this about Ted Cruz, about not being a U.S. citizen, not being eligible to run for president because of his birthplace was in Canada, although his mom was a U.S. citizen, and so by birthright, I mean, that was all settled, I guess, in regards to his qualification. Now, let me ask you, let's switch that. Say he wasn't born in Canada, but he was born in Guam, not necessarily. Well, I mean, he was born in Guam, and okay. And so, that being said, he's born in U.S. territory. He gets a U.S. citizenship like everybody else who's born in Guam, even if their parents were not U.S. citizens, but that particular person that maybe was born in Guam. So if he was born in Guam, and again, running, and of course the caucuses and different primaries throughout the state, will Trump have a cause to be concerned because he was born in Guam?
Well, I think that politicians will make political hay out of anything they think that will appeal to people. I think Ted Cruz is completely eligible to run for U.S. president. John McCain was born in the Panama Canal Zone.
Yeah.
That wasn't a U.S.
Sure.
In fact, that's an excellent point. Panama Canal Zone was the exact same status as Guam had.
Yeah.
And also, McCain was born of U.S. parents. Ted Cruz, his mother was a U.S. citizen, and I think that anyone trying to make this is a kind of, I view this as an extension of what's commonly called in the United States the birther argument that related to the Obama, whether Obama was actually born in Hawaii or not.
Okay.
And that's fine. It appeals to a certain fringe, crazy, radical division of the Republican Party and let them have their mini universe views on these things.
So, okay, if I wanted to run for president as being born here in Guam, would I be eligible if I moved back to the States and run?
I think you could run for U.S. president directly from here.
From here.
You wouldn't have to go anywhere because you're in the United States.
But if Trump runs, he'll use that against me, right?
Of course, any politician will use any technique that I hate to say it, but in politics, there's an old saying: if it's worth fighting for, it's worth fighting dirty for. And so there's a lot of politicians who will do all kinds of dirty tricks to get themselves elected or to stay in office.
National issues versus local issues. Sure. Where do we have commonality?
Local is national, national is local. The exact same things, by and large, that affect Guam affect the rest of the United States. And we're affected, whether we know it or not, by these national things going on. When 9/11 happened, that wasn't a U.S. mainland thing. That was a Guam thing, too. So national is local. We have our issues here that need attention, and they have national boundaries and national processes to deal with them. And I think that what Guam needs, and I've said this over and over again, is just simply to ask Congress to allow our delegate to the House of Representatives to be our delegate to the U.S. Congress, so then our delegate can advise the U.S. Senate also. Because really we only have one of the two houses, a voice in one of the two houses. We need to have them in both houses, because that's where we lose out nationally on national policy.
So looking forward, who do you think eventually will be the Democrat nominee for president, and who do you think will be the Republican nominee for presidency? Who do you think, who would go against each other? In Ron McNich's polls and all that, who do you think will be the nominees?
The four big names that everyone's talked about for the last several months on the Democrat side is Clinton versus Sanders. Those two. And on the Republican side, of course, is Trump versus Cruz. And so what's going to end up happening is one of two things. Either those two pairs are going to run together, or if they lead, they're going to pick a second to run with them as vice president. Just as we have our governor and lieutenant governors run together, there's going to be a second. If Trump wins, very likely he would join with probably somebody like Cruz or Rubio. If Cruz won and he wanted to really make a statement, he would choose Trump, just as Ronald Reagan chose Bush, who was his major critic in 1980. George Bush coined the term voodoo economics for Reagan's ideas about how to change the economy. So there's some interesting pairings that can be made. And so, but again, I forgot my magic 8 ball today, so I can't really.